Somewhere in Beijing, officials are having conversations they don't want Moscow to know about. Not with Vladimir Putin. With the people who might replace him. For more than 2 decades, the world understood the China-Russia relationship one way, two great powers standing as equals against the West. That picture is no longer accurate. And according to new reporting, China has started quietly preparing for what comes after Putin, without waiting for an answer on when that will actually happen. This is not a story about friendship. It's a story about leverage. So what does it mean when the student starts planning for a future the teacher hasn't agreed to yet? Let's separate the reporting from the speculation. According to the Wall Street Journal, Chinese officials have been expanding contacts with Russian officials and members of the elite, people who could shape Russian policy after Putin eventually leaves power, whenever that is. The report also says Russian authorities have found evidence of Chinese intelligence efforts to reach mid-level officials, and chose not to publicize it, reportedly to avoid damaging relations with Beijing. The numbers explain why this shift is happening. China now accounts for roughly 40% of Russia's foreign trade, up from about 10% before 2013. Russia, in return, makes up less than 4% of China's global trade. That imbalance is the foundation of everything else in this story. The clearest recent example came in May, when Putin traveled to Beijing hoping to finalize the long-delayed Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline, a project Russia badly needs after losing most of its European gas market. According to the journal, Chinese officials asked Russia to sell that gas at prices close to its own subsidized domestic rate. No deal was signed. That single failed negotiation tells you almost everything about where the power in this relationship currently sits. To understand why Beijing is doing this now, we have to look at what the war in Ukraine actually did to Russia's position. Isolation from Western markets left Moscow with far fewer options for trade, technology, and financing. China became, by necessity, its most important partner. But there is a catch. Necessity is not the same as trust. One historian cited in the reporting points to an older lesson from Chinese strategic thinking, a memory of the 1960s when the Soviet Union treated China as a junior partner, and that heavy-handed approach helped break the alliance apart. Beijing appears determined not to repeat Moscow's old mistake. In public, she continues to treat Putin with visible respect. In private, according to the reporting, China is pressing for concessions on energy pricing, finance, and influence across Central Asia. That's the core of the hedge. By building relationships beyond Putin himself, with technocrats, security officials, and state corporation leaders, China is protecting its position no matter who governs Russia next. It's not a bet on any single successor. It's insurance against uncertainty. It's worth being careful here. Some commentary online has taken this reporting and stretched it into a firm prediction that Putin's exit is imminent, weeks or months away. That's not what the reporting itself claims. What it does show is a strategic hedge, China preparing for a range of futures, not announcing a timeline for any one of them. This shift doesn't stay contained inside a Russia-China relationship. It moves outward, and one of the countries watching most closely is India. For decades, Russia has been one of India's most consistent strategic partners, a supplier of military equipment and a relationship largely free of the tensions India has with China. That predictability was, in part, personal. Putin himself has been widely viewed as favorable toward India. A successor's posture is simply unknown. If Russia's foreign policy becomes more heavily shaped by Beijing's preferences over time, that has second-order effects for New Delhi. A Russia more aligned with China's interests could mean a more cautious partner on issues where China and India disagree, from their shared border to regional influence across Central and South Asia. None of this is guaranteed. Russia has defied predictions of collapse or realignment before, and its leadership has historically guarded its independence even while economically dependent on outside partners. But the trend line documented in this reporting, deeper economic dependence, quieter Chinese outreach to Russia's next generation of leaders, is difficult to dismiss as speculation. It's already underway. For India, and for every country that built its foreign policy around a predictable Moscow, the real story isn't whether Putin leaves power soon. It's what predictability itself is worth, and how much of it may already be gone. Great power friendships are often described in the language of loyalty, shared history, shared interests, a united front against common rivals. But underneath that language, relationships between states are usually built on leverage. And leverage, unlike loyalty, shifts constantly. The question this reporting really raises isn't about one man's political future. It's about what happens to a country's foreign policy once it stops being anyone's equal partner and starts being someone else's plan.